A very beautiful morning to you. This is Big Heart Radio 92.1 FM Asaba, the only station that beats for you. Once again, I am Marvelous Akpe, and here I am welcoming you to Tuesday's edition of the Daily Brief. And the Daily Brief is our newspaper review program where we take a look at headlines that have made it to national newspapers in Nigeria. Okay, so this morning we're going to be taking review from newspapers like the Vanguard, Punch, the Guardian, the Nation, and the Pointer newspaper. This is the second time we'll be having this. So since it's closer to home, I think we should basically just start with the Pointer newspaper. All right, and on the cover page of the Pointer this morning, we have Oborewori advocates collaborative intelligence-led security as he hosts Defense College team. Oborewori advocates collaborative intelligence-led security, hosts Defense College team. All right, and then there's a photo of the Delta State Deputy Governor Monday Onyeme, who represented the Delta State Governor Honorable Sheriff Oborewori, and then he's presenting a souvenir to the team leader of the participants of the Advanced Intelligence Officers Course 16 2026 from the Defense Intelligence College, Karu, Abuja. We actually had this on the news this morning, so if you've been following from the morning program, you would have heard the news already. Okay, so away from that, we have return to fuel subsidy reverse gains that's coming from the Minister of Petroleum and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris. He says that return to fuel subsidy will reverse gains that's coming from the minister. Yes, there's been a whole discussion about it. The NBA conference is currently ongoing in Port Harcourt, and there was a robust discussion about this where presidential candidates for different political parties, the SDP, the NDC, the ADC, they were all there, and they had these discussions, and we'll get to talk about this much later on the platform. Okay, so just stay tuned. All right, and we have also Delta strengthens framework to harness tech for economic growth. Delta strengthens framework to harness tech for economic growth, and that's basically all we have on the Pointer newspaper this morning. So now moving on to the Nation, we have why coalition consensus failed by Atiku, Obi, Showore. It says why coalition consensus failed. And it also says, I will retain subsidy removal if elected, says NDC candidate. I will retain subsidy removal if elected, says NDC candidate. So opposition coalition aspirants, and I talked about them being in Port Harcourt and then having a discussion. It's also comprised of discussions on coalition, on subsidy removal. They talked about a whole lot. So they're talking about why coalition consensus failed by Atiku, Obi, and Showore. Yes, they did say that it failed because fine, they all had beautiful ideas, but nobody was willing to step down to let the other person run. But then there's still time. Let's see. Anything can happen. Fingers crossed. Okay, so we have the Nation newspaper this morning. It says Bonga West's apparel project to attract $21 billion investment. And that's on page 3 of the Nation newspaper. And also on the Nation, we have Tinubu leads tributes for Gogo as Nollywood actor is buried. And that's on page 14 of the Nation. And then we have crowd as Senator Gojiri affirms APC membership in Gombe State. That's also on the Nation newspaper, page 3. And still on, we have governors won't have absolute control of state police. Governors won't have absolute control of state police. And that's on the news, page 2. Governors won't have absolute control. I wonder how that's going to go. The state police has been getting a lot of attention, and now they're saying that the governors won't have absolute control of the state police, which has been the concern of most Nigerians, wondering if this would not lead to abuse of power by the state, because now that they're going to be in full control of the state police, that could lead to just some sort of oppression can come up, because everyone now has somebody in charge in the police. But then they're saying that they would not have absolute control of the police. But we'll see how all of this unfolds. And then we have, still on the Nation, how terrorism financiers hide funds. That's coming from NFRU, how terrorism financiers hide funds. Okay, and we have it on the news page 3. They talked about how they hide funds using the accounts of people who have passed on, how they use just so many platforms to hide their funds. Ibadan Ijebode dualized road ready in 36 months. Ibadan Ijebode dualized road ready in 36 months. When I see reports like this, I find it really, really funny, because I mean, we've had a road construction that's been going on even here in Delta State that we will still get to suffer, and it's taking years. Just the road from let me say Onitsha to Benin City. We all know the condition of the roads, and we know how long the project has been going on, how people's businesses have been affected, and all the sufferings that road users have had to suffer plying that road, and it's taken months. And then we are now having promises that the Ibadan Ijebode dualized road will be ready in 36 months. Well, no problem if you trust that report. That it's actually going to be ready in 36 months. We hope so. We hope it's not going to be a situation where one end is completed and then they commission that end while construction is still going on another on another end. Minister Nelfund has disbursed 322 billion naira as student loan. Minister says Nelfund has disbursed 322 billion naira as student loan. That's on page 6 of the Nation newspaper. I mean, I think Nelfund and the student loan scheme has to be the most interesting part of this administration for me. I think it's a really commendable one. All right, on the Guardian newspaper this morning, we have Commuters businesses groan as Edo Delta gridlock cuts off south. The pictures and the videos from that scene, oh my God, it's been traumatizing being on the road. I've seen a video of people trying to brush their teeth, bathing, just because they've been on the road for several days. And it's just really sad. Just Edo to Delta State. It's just 2 states. There is no state in between. Moving from Edo to Delta State, and people have to suffer this much. And trust me, after this point, I'm sure there's still a whole lot of bad spots waiting for them in just line up ahead. I would not lie, watching these videos, they've really been traumatizing. Every day you get a different angle. Somebody makes a video. The next day there's another video. Even in the morning you can find a video. I think I've seen this morning where I saw some of the road users, some of the commuters trying to fix a portion of the failed road. And then I've seen, there's a picture I'm looking at here on the Guardian newspaper that has 2 trucks. It seems not like they collided, but one seems like due to the bad road, it's falling on the other one. Oh my God, it's just too much. Things we get to suffer as Nigerians. It's sad. And then I also saw a picture that was trending yesterday of Nigeria in 2026 and the UK in 1980 something. Was that UK or US in 1980 something? In 1980 something. And oh my God, it was just embarrassing to look at. Yeah, Nigeria is a developing country. We hope to get better someday, but until then, Nigerians are suffering too much. Something has to be done, and it has to be done fast. Okay, that report is on the Guardian newspaper, page 6. Also, we have 2027, Nigeria needs faithful, not religious president, says Idowu Ferron. He says Nigeria needs faithful, not religious president. Yes, faithful to your mandate, faithful to your promises. You don't have to be religious to be faithful to your mandate. If you say this is what you're going to do, you should be able to do that at the end of the day. If you promise Nigerians that you're going to give us good roads, electricity, security, try to work towards that. Better infrastructure, let's see it. It's not enough to say you're very religious. Oh, we know you are a pastor, you're a Muslim, you're an imam, you're this, you're that. But at the end of the day, you're failing on your promises. So we need you to be faithful to your promises. We need you to be faithful to that mandate you've presented to us, and not merely being a religious person. Okay? And we have CDHR demands probe of fake government agencies. CDHR demands probe of fake government agencies, and that's on the news page 5 of the Guardian. Dangote holds blend stock imports as domestic petrol supply falls by 21%. Dangote holds blend stock imports as domestic petrol supply falls by 21%. That's on the Guardian. And still on the Guardian, we have banks account for 92% of suspicious transactions filed in 2025. Banks account for 92% of suspicious transactions filed in 2025. And that's on the business page 15 of the Guardian newspaper. Banks account for 92% of suspicious transactions filed in 2025. All right, and we have Obi Sowore differ with Atiku over proposed return of petrol subsidy. Obi Sowore differ with Atiku over proposed return of petrol subsidy, and that's on the news page 6. And we have states impose hidden fees on operators despite slashing ROW charges. States impose hidden fees on operators despite slashing ROW charges, and that's on the business page 16 of the Guardian newspaper. We have Oshun, 2 feared dead as violence rocks Ikire community. This is sad. 2 feared dead as violence rocks Ikire community, and that's on the news page 7. I mean, the governor hasn't even been sworn in for his second tenure, and we're already having reports of violence in the community. Well, I mean, yesterday we talked about how there's just so many forms of insecurity, security issues going on in the country. And then communal violence like this has been named as a part of it, and these are issues between communities that could easily be settled, and it still somehow results to people losing their lives. Now we have 2 feared dead as violence rocks Ikire community. All right, and still on the Guardian, we have Nigeria advances $21 billion Bonga deep water project 25 years after discovery, and that's on the news page 5 of the Guardian newspaper. All right, let's move away from the Guardian to the Punch, where we have terrorists using dead persons' accounts crowdfunding. That's coming from NFIU. Terrorists using dead persons' accounts and crowdfunding. NFIU proxy accounts, SIMs, coded transfers used to move illicit funds, NFIU report says. And also we have terror commanders control accounts open the names of wives, sisters, and associates. Terror commanders control accounts open the names of wives, sisters, and associates. And then we have criminal networks exploit banking telecom loopholes as experts demand tighter checks and intelligence gathering. All right, and that's on the Punch newspaper talking about how terrorists are using dead persons' accounts and crowdfunding. It's on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. And also on the Punch, we have poor varsity rankings could stunt Africa's growth. That's coming from former President Goodluck Jonathan. He says poor varsity rankings could stunt Africa's growth. And that's on page 12 of the Punch newspaper. And also on the Punch, we have 2027 debates. Obi Amechi differ over subsidy. 2027 debate. Obi Amechi differ over subsidy. And it's on page 12 of the Punch newspaper. And also we have on the Punch newspaper this morning, U.S. steps up military training for Nigerian troops. U.S. steps up military training for Nigerian troops, and it's on page 7 of the Punch. Ace actor Okogo buried, Tinubu Abiodun mourn, and that's on page 7 of the Punch. 7 killed, 2 injured in Ogun State crash. 7 killed, 2 injured in Ogun crash, and that's on pages 4 and 5, and that's a report coming from the Federal Road Safety Corps, FRSC. And then we have NNPC partners advance $21 billion Bongo offshore project. NNPC partners advance $21 billion Bonga offshore project, and it's on page 20 of the Punch newspaper. All right, also on the Vanguard, we have opposition parties lash Yari over APC rule beyond 2031 vow. Opposition parties lash Yari over APC rule beyond 2031 vow. Well, it's just his opinion. It doesn't mean that because he has said it, it's going to happen. Like we'll see on the internet, God is not your younger brother. So because you've said something doesn't mean it's going to happen exactly as you said it. And this is Nigeria, where we have a very interesting political space. I mean, just this a few years back, we could say that Delta State is predominantly ruled by the PDP. It's controlled by the PDP. We've had several governors from the PDP and all of that. No one would imagine that one day an entire government will just move to the ruling party, the APC, and now it's become the ruling party. So I think at this point, nothing would really surprise me. So yes, we might just get really comfortable that yes, it's APC now. I mean, in a few years, another party could emerge. It can even be a party that may not appear to be prominent yet. Anything can just happen. There could just be a shift and something different might happen. That's what I think. But Yari believes that APC will rule beyond 2031. That's just his belief. And it's on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. And also we have ADC, NDC, SDP, NNPP, and PDP saying that it's an empty boast that voters will decide. It's an empty boast. Voters will decide. And also he's overconfident and detached from reality. That's coming from Ame and Okori. They're saying that he's overconfident and detached from reality. Say PDP's 2015 fate awaits APC next year. It says PDP's 2015 fate awaits APC next year. So all of a sudden, PDP is now to say that the party, that used to mock other political parties. I really didn't see this coming. Okay, that's on the Vanguard newspaper, page 5. Also on the Vanguard, we have domestic petrol supply falls 20.6% to 25.8 million liters daily. And that's coming from NMDPRA. It says domestic petrol supply falls 20.6% to 25.8 million liters daily. And in half between filth and survival, the hard life along the canal. And that's on page 10. Between filth and survival, the hard life along the canal. All right, we have fake agency. Court orders protects U.S. Says DG marked for arrest. Fake agency. Court order protects us. Okay. I don't know why I read that as US. A fake agency. Court order protects us. Says DG marked for arrest. And that's on page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper. And we have Tinubu Abiodun. Others mourn as late actor is buried. Tinubu Abiodun. Others mourn as late actor is buried. And that's also on the Vanguard newspaper. You can find that on page 7 of the Vanguard. All right, we have NBA confab. Obi disagrees with Atiku on fuel subsidy removal. It says mismanagement, not enough to retain it. NBA confab. Obi disagrees with Atiku on fuel subsidy removal. Says mismanagement, not enough to retain it. And that's on page 26. Yes, page 26 of the Vanguard newspaper. Also, we have U.S. warns Nigerians over fake documents in visa applications. U.S. warns Nigerians over fake documents in visa applications. And that's on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper. Underage drinking. NAFDAC begins street-by-street alcohol crackdown. Underage drinking. NAFDAC begins street-by-street alcohol crackdown. And that's on page 9. That's on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper. So this actually brought me to something that I experienced one time. I was in public transport going to Ubolu, and then I saw this isn't just an ordinary, this is like an advanced woman. She's an elderly woman, and she had a child who appeared to be probably her grandchild. And she was drinking this, there's this brand of sachet alcohol that has a chocolate flavor. She was drinking it, and then she put some into the kid's mouth. And then I told her, oh, madam, this thing is alcoholic. You shouldn't be giving it to this child. She said, but it's sweet, but it's sweet. I'll never forget that experience. So imagine a child as young as that already ingesting alcohol. And the NAFDAC lately, they've been firm on their clampdown on sachet alcohol, saying that it's just very easy for children, young people to just walk into these shops and then buy these sachets and then put them in their pockets or hide them in their school bags. It's easier for them than carrying bottles, which would be easily discovered by maybe their parents or their teachers. Hence, that's part of the reason for the clampdown. And then also the fakes, that yes, the risks of having so many fake products in the market. So they've begun a street by street alcohol crackdown, and this is because of underage drinking. All right, we have NKST Church rejects Benue ranching plan. NKST Church rejects Benue ranching plan, says 5,987 members killed and 753 branches destroyed. That's on page 29. It says 5,987 members killed and 753 branches destroyed, and hence the rejection of the ranching plan. It's on page 29 of the Vanguard newspaper. And also on the Vanguard, we have royal family drags Ogun governor and kingmakers to court. Royal family drags Ogun state governor and kingmakers to court. And you can find all of this on the Vanguard newspaper this morning. All right, it's still the Daily Brief on Big Heart Radio 92.1 FM. And this morning, we've taken a couple of papers. We've taken reports from The Pointer with a big story as Oborewori advocates collaborative intelligence-led security as it hosts defense college team. And then on The Nation, we had a mast headline with why coalition consensus failed. That's by Atiku, Obi, and Showore. And on The Guardian, we had commuters' businesses groan as Edo Delta gridlock cuts off South-South. Commuters' businesses groan as Edo Delta gridlock cuts off South-South. And on The Punch, we had terrorists using dead persons' accounts and crowdfunding. That's coming from the NFIU. It says terrorists using dead persons' accounts and crowdfunding. And also on the Vanguard, we had opposition parties lash Yari over APC rule beyond 2031 vow. Opposition parties lash Yari over APC rule beyond 2031 vow. And that was on page 5. Yes, you can find that on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Well,